Hi, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving you my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. You know, whenever you hear online that game no one's ever heard of, I get really annoyed because more times than not, whenever somebody uses it, it's more times than not just used as a thing to just make an epic thumbnail, rather than something to actually say something about the game and how little is known about the game. I mean, for fuck's sake, I've had the pleasure of covering 5 games on YouTube that no one bothered to do so beforehand, so when I see it, I kinda take it personally. Though that's not to say that it doesn't exist or can be used properly. I mean, like for today's example, we are about to talk about a game that barely anyone talked about. Because you want to know how little people talk about this game? No one talks about this game so much, nobody can get the name right. Yeah, I cannot joke to you about this. I've actually bothered to go look around a bit, and no one bothered to get the name correct. Because it's not Legends of Alon D'ar, it's Legends of Alon D'ar. And like only 3 people bothered to cover the game, and most of those were like 10 years ago. And they barely went past the first few hours to even learn why the game is so bad. Like, yeah, it's kind of simple face value why it's bad, but like, there's more to it than that. The game was developed by Storefront Studios, who made the awesome Two Towers game and the Demon Stone, which the latter one actually has a port on PC, which is super neat, but yeah, that was all they really made that's really notable, because most of the games they ever made were just sports games, so I really don't have much to discuss here. So with that out of the way, let us begin the story of Legends of Alon D'ar. So the game begins with our main character, Jarek, dreaming of some being awakening from a cocoon mentioning Alon D'ar. Just to show again, not a lot of people pay attention or care. After awakening from the dream, he tries to go head out and ask Lord Grandar to become a warrior, to which then he is summarily just laughed at and runs away. And then he meets another woman called Layla, who is a Cremarian, which I'll mention more later on, but just note they feel a connection for each other, and it just... there? We'll talk about it later, I promise. And I do want to mention this because this is just funny in my mind. Because you see, immediately, and I cannot stress this enough, immediately after she leaves the scene, the village gets attacked. Like, I can't even joke to you, it is just that. And after fending off an attacker, he then gains a strange mark on his hand after trying to pick up a stone they had, which then the weird woman, which is just the magic of this world, which is spelled W-Y-R-D for some reason. I'm not sure why they have it like this, but whatever. Just note, it's just the magic of the world, kind of important later. She basically tasks him with the goal of trying to figure out what the hell's going on, why are there changelings, who sent them to attack us, and why they wanted us to fight the Dogni, who they looked like. And try to also warn the Dogni that Lord Grandar, the guy who's the leader of the village, that he plans on attacking them. That's just the basic intro of the plot. At least you can say one thing about this intro, it's not a very long one. Like, it is very quick to the point, doesn't really muddle around with what's going on. It just says, here's what's going on, here's what's happening, here's your goal. Go. Which is useful. I mean, like, I would have maybe kept it a little longer just to add a little more characterization to the town, Jarek, and maybe more of the civilization, but that's fine. We don't need everything in the first few minutes. And once you're done with that, you're basically free to go wherever you want. You can do the tutorial or just go straight out there and do your tasks. And if you do that, you'll be hit immediately with this shit. And like, this is where most people either bail out or just say the game's bad, and continue on just to show off how bad it is. And like, if you say that and just stopped, I really don't blame you. This introduction is super bad, like, I'm not even sure why they thought this was a good intro. So with that being out here, let's actually talk about the gameplay. And well, how it is. You'll understand why I'm saying that in a minute. So combat is a basic ATB system where a character can perform an action once their bar is full. And like, you can also move around, though why you're given this ability is not very clear to me. The only case use I've ever had for it is when I get hit by an area of an effect attack, but those are rare to find and enemies who can use it are usually only in the end game, so it wasn't really that much of a case. In any case, after you fill up your bar, you can actually use whatever item you have on your belt and use it in combat. And that's really it. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Those are really it. I mean, sure, there are different weapons which have different speeds and also attack damage. And yes, that last part is important because certain enemies are weak against only certain types, so it's kind of important, but not really, as like, if you just focus on swords, axes, and hammers, you'll be mostly fine throughout the entire game. And the reason why I didn't use the other types is more because I didn't see their use case, or, more importantly, they're just not worth it. For example, the ranged weapons, where basically they have a limited amount of uses, even if they come back to you, like the chakram, for some fucking reason. And that's not even to mention that the damage aren't even worth it at the end of the day. And the only time I ever did use a chakram or a ranged weapon was because they had a unique skill to them. Yeah, let me elaborate on this. Later on, you can find weapons with skills that allow you to use magic without the use of an orb, which is how magic is usually used. Magic and some skill abilities can be unlocked at certain save points with gold and upgraded using power points that you gain throughout the entire game. And once you fully upgraded a skill tree, you basically gained a super skill, which either makes a weapon more powerful, or in Magic's case, gain a super ability, basically a new spell that is super powerful. And like, I don't know why I didn't do this. I think it was just because I didn't see the effort put into it being worth it. Like, more times than not, you're best off just putting it in damage and speed. Any other stat is pointless. Maybe critical hits, but fully upgrading it is worth it in the end, because by the end, once I unlocked it, it basically made the game a non-issue, which I'll talk about more in a bit, but like, yeah. But really, at the end of the day, that is the combat. Like, I'm not joking. I've literally mentioned everything in the combat. Well, there is one thing, but I'll mention that later when it comes up, but really, it's not even going to change it all that much either. It truly is that basic and simple. And the worst part is, it's over 20 hours. Though really, I don't think the game is that long, mostly because I went out of my way to grind fights and also try to explore the levels a bit, just trying to find collectibles throughout the levels. And like, to note, the collectibles don't matter too much. I'll explain something in a moment, but trust me, it's not that worth it. Actually, speaking of grinding, I really didn't mention this beforehand, but enemies don't respawn, so all the enemies in an area are what you get. And ironically enough, the only area that doesn't do this rule is the swamp area, and I just stayed around there just because I wanted to make sure I was grinded up enough so I didn't run into any more issues like I was dealing with the beginning. And ironically enough, it really did help, because it made sure that while I was still having issues, it wasn't so much I was like, ugh, more like, eh. You know what I mean? But I also did that because there's another weird thing about the game. Because you see, you're not allowed to go backward. Well, there are times when you can, but those are scripted moments, and there's only like one moment where you're allowed to fully explore the world. I see really no reason as to why they did this, and like, I think they did it because of narrative reasons, which is sort of fine, but like, come on. And what's weirder is, after one area, there's like only one area in the game where you're just not allowed to come back ever again. Why is this is very unclear to me. I get like the in-universe reason, but that doesn't make it a very compelling reason. It's just very weird in all cases. And to mention this more, even when you do come back to an area, it's more because they just buffed the new enemies and just made it more annoying. Though ironically enough, that actually made me realize something about the game that really got on to me. There's not a lot of enemy variety. There's only like 6 to 7 enemies in the game. So it's like, why? And to side note for a moment, since we're talking about the graphics for a moment, all 3 of these reviewers bothered to mention the graphics, and I'm like, why are they so mean to it? It looks fine. I have seen far worse PS2 games. This is fine. I mean, granted, it could have been a little more polished, but otherwise, it's fine. You'd clearly tell what the character looks like, how they feel, if that makes sense. I can't explain it to someone, but It looks nice. If you told me to look at this for a little bit, I would be like, yeah, it's fine. And also a weird thing about the character models is that after a while, when you're upgrading a character and you come out, you can actually notice your character models change a bit depending on what you upgraded, which is really neat, though I'm not sure why they can revert back into something. I think there's something about that. I can't be for sure because I'm not that knowledgeable about the game, so maybe a coder can tell me? Who knows? I mean, I just find it so odd that they complained about the graphics when it just looks fine. Come on, people. Not everything needs to go to the max on graphics. And, well, speaking on the intro, let's actually kind of work backwards again. The intro to the gameplay is really hard. Like, again, I cannot joke to you. It is like, if you're not careful, you will fucking die. But, like, that's only, like, in the beginning. Like, after that whole section plus Dagny, the game's difficulty goes downhill. Well, not downhill, down a slope. It then kind of rests upon a meh difficulty where it's like, combat is no longer something you have to actively truly think about. Like, you might have to think about the damage type, but otherwise, enemies can no longer deal enough damage to you where they are an automatic threat, where you're like, oh god, I need to handle them all immediately. But they're not weak enough to where your damage is high enough to just insta-kill them. And that's where the game usually rests upon. And it's just so weird that, like, I feel like people would give the game a fairer shake if they thought the gameplay was more this than just whatever the hell the intro was. Because I do say a bad intro can make anything worse. It just makes you wonder why the hell did we start here? But then again, we can always argue that on the livelong day. Though to be firmly honest, I'm not entirely sure when this slope happened. All I know is that it happened, I'm just not sure when it was. I think it was mostly because I was on super autopilot throughout the game. So I lost a lot of my ability to kind of like figure out exactly when it happened. And when I figured that part out, I also realized something worse. You see, I was getting this vague idea of remembering, this feels familiar. And it wasn't until I got a comment on the game did I realize what it was. You see, the game reminded me a lot of, well, White Knight Chronicles. It's a slow game with a bad intro that just makes you wonder what the hell are we doing here, with a gameplay that's just boring and just tedious to do by the end of it all. Though I will give it credit, it tells a complete story. That could be more said than whatever the hell White Knight Chronicles was doing, barely telling half a story pretty badly. Like, I think the story of Alon D'ar is mediocre and it's total okay. Like, it's not going to win any awards, but it does its job, it does what it needs to do, and it's overall fine. And like, if I had to give the story any real major issue, it's that it has a lot of dead air, for lack of a better term. Where there feels like a whole section where we're not really doing anything. We're just kind of spinning our wheels until we get to a certain point where stuff actually happens. Like, there's this whole section where you're going through the Whitewater Gorge, and like, nothing really happens there. It's only there to be a facilitator of more gameplay, and nothing really even happens in between the air. You're just there to be there. It's only like that because the characters don't really talk to each other during gaming or anywhere in between moments. Like, for the most part, you have Tahir with you, and he's like, for lack of a better term, Knuckles without the chuckle. See, he basically joins up with us because after his village got attacked by the Changeling, he swears vengeance on whoever killed his brother. And like, he really doesn't change or really act any different. And really, he actually represents a other problem where basically it feels like we're taking wide circles just to get to the goal we're trying to get when it's actually very much a straight line. Like, at one point we want to talk to Tahir's brother's ghost, but like, that gets sidelined a lot of times until we're actually asked to do it. And it just feels weird that the game wants to do it now rather than just getting it out of the way. And I feel like the story could have done more with this thing it was doing with the characters in general. Like, for example, Sundeep. He's a Sorosian that we meet very early on, and he's an arrogant asshole. But the next time we see him, it's a 180. I really cannot stress this enough. it feels like, why did you even bother when the character is barely on screen? So this character change and, well, growth doesn't feel natural because he's been so off screen. It's like, why are we even here, man? In Talani, it's just kind of there. I mean, she has a point to the plot, but otherwise, I'm not entirely sure of her point in the story in and of itself. Like, my best guess is that they wanted a representative of each species just to be a part of our main party, so it feels natural. And like, I get that, but at the same time, Talani's involvement with our journey feels tangential. And that's not to say they're all bad characters, they're like, fine. There's nothing really particularly wrong with these characters, it's just more or less, it's like a little snack. Like, they're fine for what they are, but you feel like there could have been so much more, you know what I mean? And the strange part is, there really could have been. Here's the thing I didn't really tell you. Like, there is a lot of lore in this game, like, a metric fuck ton. Like, you can learn a lot about the characters and the world, but not through the game directly in a story sense, but more often than not, just these books, through the pages you find through the collectibles, that actually elaborate on some of the more of the lore behind characters or the history of their people, which is like really baffling in my mind. Like, why not just tell us this stuff and make us, learn this stuff as we're going along? Because, like, I wouldn't know why the hell Sundeep needs to get some sunlight in order to recover, because that doesn't really make any sense, and it's just something he needs, not understanding the importance of the sun through the Serosion. And, like, I feel as though they incorporated more of this lore and details and history about their world, I would be a little more invested, because, hey, sometimes learning that stuff can make you more invested. It makes this world feel alive. And that's not to say it isn't a feeling alive at times. There is some stuff there. It's just, not enough. And like, the other thing is, after you recruited everyone, the plot is pretty much done and over with. And it kind of feels like it's wasting its time, like where we have to go through this one icy area for no other reason than to just get this crystal. And it's like, there are more natural ways to do this and actually make it more engaging. It just feels weird is all I'm saying. And I feel like honestly we could just talk about the plot in a more direct sense. As really, I feel as though maybe just telling people the plot is interesting because no one bothered to really talk about the plot in any real sense. So here we go. Back in Dagny, we actually meet an oracle of the Dagny that basically tells us Jarek is involved in all this and needs to find the tombs of the 4 legendary heroes of each of the species, that he may do something, and you see, after going to one of them, he meets an ethereal. No one knows for sure what they are, we later learn what they are, I'll explain it then, and basically they attack us. But during this time, we also unlock the Juggernaut form, which, this is something else I haven't really referenced, and I feel like I need to reference it now. Basically, there's a character-specific mechanic each of the characters have. Jared gets the ability to transform either to the Juggernaut or something else later on, I'll explain. Tahir gets the ability to transfer health for magic and vice versa. Talani had the ability to use her dragon in combat or to heal, and Sundeep had the ability to eliminate foes. Though it's a low chance, so it wasn't all that useful. And it's really not that useful, like, I never bothered with the Juggernaut form. It's too weak than just literally just punching them or just literally using your sword. Though, honestly, one of the things I feel like the game could have done more was the unique abilities that each of the characters have. As I mentioned, Jarek gets the Juggernaut, but that allows him to push things. And Sundeep can use his Serojan magic to teleport stuff between nodes, Tahir can go through poisonous gas, Talani has her dragon, and I feel like the game could have been more interesting if they bothered to make some more puzzles where basically you have to use all 4 of them together in such a way to get through some sections, which would have been interesting, but I'm not really fretting over this, I'm just saying that could have been more useful, but whatever. It would have been more like a trying for anyone who's played those games. It would have been something like that. Go play those games, by the way. They're really good. And essentially, after getting the other 2 members, you basically learn at the Chimerian tomb that we learned Jarek is actually Alon D'ar, who's been reincarnated to right the wrongs of the past he did before. We also learn that the Ethereals and Alon D'ar is actually a part of the Cardarthians, who were these ancient species that existed around the world before everyone else. No one really knows anything about them other than they disappeared and maybe the Bagak, but nobody gives a shit about them. They're rock people. They're just assholes. But anyway, after going to the last tomb, you are actually called by the big bad Zahar'nar, who's been we've been seeing a few times throughout the game, to go to his hideout and finally face him. We find him, and also Layla, who's actually working with him and was the one who basically framed Talani. I didn't actually explain this. Talani's with us because she got exiled by her people because she was accused of a murder she didn't commit, and basically she was covering for Layla, even though it was a bunch of other stuff, but basically she was lying to cover her ass while trying to work with him. And it's I'm a little conflicted on it. There's been hints here and there that there's more to this, and that she knows more than she's letting on, but also, it kind of just feels there. I don't hate the twist, it's just, I don't know, it feels lacking. I think it's more because we don't know more about her, and maybe her history about why she needs to do this, or why she feels the need to do this, but whatever, it's just a thing. But she even dies in the end, so it kind of doesn't matter when she's trying to turn to good, and it's I don't know, it just feels weird, you know? And I'm still not sure, were they originally planning on making some connection with them, and they just decided to scrap that? Or was she already turned to evil by that point, and just said, whatever? I don't know, it's kind of weird like that. I'm just unsure. I'm pretty sure there's a clear answer, I'm just too stupid. Anyway, let's continue on and finish this up. We meet the Ethereals again, who I just remind you all are actually the Cardarthians, who existed before, and believe Alon D'ar is causing a lot of problems with the weird, which is being drained throughout the world. And Jarek's just are you serious? Come on, people. And basically one of them betrays the both of them, and it's yeah, dumbass. I don't know how long that took, but I don't know, it just feels like a weird twist that doesn't really matter. Anyway, we do finally meet Zahar'nar, and then he kind of reveals a few things. So Zahar'nar is just flat out evil. He just wants to take over the world. But that doesn't really answer what the hell Alon D'ar did. Well, you see, after defeating Zahar'nar, he basically took on the weird that he was absorbing, but he also went a little crazy, power crazy, and just, destroyed the world. We are literally just on a piece of the world that Zahar'nar wants to revive, but requires all the weird in this place. So that basically means kill everyone here. So you transform into Alon D'ar and kick his ass. Though I gotta really say, I'm not sure why they forced us into using the form. It's it could barely do any damage against him, so it felt really annoying. I had to use the other characters just to kill him, because Alon D'ar can't do anything. He's literally that worthless. Was I doing something wrong with him? I'm not sure, but it felt like I wasn't able to do anything against him. Anyway, you kill him, Alon D'ar takes control of the weird to try to rebalance it, goes a little crazy, gets reminded by his friends that, hey, don't be a dumbass, and basically goes, you're right guys, and just resets everything back to where it was. The end. Yeah, that's pretty much the story of the game. And that was Legend of Alon D'ar. And it's very ironic. I really didn't like it at first, and I still don't like it, but I'm okay with it now. The game kind of reminds me of just the first bad impression with an okay fruit that you think is okay. The first time you eat into it, it tastes terrible, but every time after that, it's fine. And I don't know, I feel after viewing everything this game has to offer, I can't really hate it. It just feels there. I know it's trying, and there's some things that are interesting, but it's just there. The story is interesting, but a bit bland. I could have been looking more into the material to flesh out the world in a more direct manner, if that makes sense. The combat is too boring and not interesting enough to compel me to play the game for a lot long. And really, they really did not need to make the combat this slow. Next time, no more heroes, and a weird thought in my head about normalcy.